The Crisis Center of Tampa Bay is seeing call volumes skyrocket after they unveiled the new 988 number for the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. They say the number of people calling for help during a mental health crisis tripled over the weekend. But we looked into what actually happens when a person calls for help, and it might not be what you expect. ABC Action News reporter Wendy Lane learns what two Bay Area women experienced while calling for help in their most desperate time of need.
I had fallen into a very massive depression.
Lisa Yop says she credits the suicide hotline, which is answered locally by the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, for saving her life several years ago.
I attempted suicide and my daughter found me.
Lisa says her daughter called the hotline for help.
She saved my life. The hotline saved my life.
Through local resources the hotline offered, Lisa says she was able to get the help and care she needed.
They use a lot of what's called DBT skills to teach you how to make it through the moment.
However, not all experiences have been the same.
I've struggled with mental illness my entire life.
A woman we're calling Beth and not showing her face to protect her anonymity says a few years ago she was overwhelmed with challenges in her marriage and at work, and she reached out for help.
I was feeling very desperate, so I called the suicide hotline. I wasn't 5 minutes into the conversation when the young woman asked me if I had ever been Baker acted, and I had heard enough stories, horror stories really, about that, so I panicked and I hung up. The next thing you know, I had 4 police officers standing in my kitchen ready to Baker act me.
Beth says when she called, she thought there would be a professional mental health therapist on the other end of the line.
I never anticipated that one of the first questions was, have you ever been Baker acted?
A question that Beth says is triggering for someone with high anxiety.
This was a horrible experience for me. It was traumatizing, and being frightened or terrified that I was going to be carried off against my own will.
We reached out to the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, who responds to 988 and 211 calls for Hillsborough and Charlotte counties.
First and foremost, when somebody makes a call, we need to make sure that they're safe. Physical safety is part of that process. So part of that is doing a safety assessment.
Ken Gibson with the Crisis Center says hotline staff go through weeks of crisis training before taking calls.
The vast majority of calls into crisis lines or even a suicide line, you're not doing active rescue. There's not police involved. It's going to be a conversation.
As for Beth, she says she eventually found help on her own through therapy and a support network.
You know, that was the first time I ever called the hotline, and it's the last time I'll ever call it.
But Lisa says she believes the hotline is a great resource for people to get the help they need.
To have that automatic resource is incredible. And I've reached out to the hotline since then, just when I feel like, okay, you know what, I'm struggling. And a lot of times you just need someone that's going to talk you off the cliff.
Wendy Lane, ABC Action News.